Going on, friends? It is Friday. Happy Valentine's Day. I hope you're doing well. I'm just walking and working, doing my thing. How's everyone doing today? I hope you're excited. I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day. You eat lots of chocolate, all that good stuff. Did you guys check out the newest episode of the Pre-Med Years dropped on Wednesday? It was a great episode. Student who really struggled to take the MCAT multiple times, but ultimately figured it out, got into medical school. Really great story. Eric Sobaquati, thoughts on Awesome? I just love their name is Awesome. So the Alice Walton School of Medicine, AWSOM, they call it Awesome. Yeah, I met their director of admissions and other team members at a conference in November. Nothing seemed kind of out of the ordinary. I think it's great that they're starting a school, and I think there's always fears around new schools starting, but no big issues. Go for it. Just got waitlisted for my dream school and TMDSA schools. Any advice on what to do now? Wait. Did the TMDSAS match, did it happen today? When is that? Was that today? I haven't been paying attention to the match. I always think of the match for med school is for residency is mid-March, but I always forget TMDSAS matches mid-February. It's always a month before. I didn't even realize. Olga, so you got waitlisted. Yeah, I think there will be waitlist movement. So just hang out and wait and see. A waitlist is better than a rejection. So it's good. I have the ability to graduate with my BS in biochemistry when I'm 19, or I could go to a more, quote, prestigious university and spend 4 years there. What would be the better choice for med school? Neither would be a better choice. I think at the end of the day, your goal is to do well in school, to prove that you can academically handle medical school, and then apply to medical school, right? Applying to medical school at 19 puts you at a little bit of a disadvantage just from your activities. You'll have less time to get activities, but that doesn't mean you don't graduate early. It just means maybe you take a gap year or two before applying to medical school. I would go whatever route is the cheapest, honestly, is what I would do. Warwick will be shadowing in the UK and rheumatology at Northwestern. Thoughts on how this will look on the AMCAS? Yeah. So in general, my philosophy is don't worry about how something will look on the application. It's been done before. You're not the first person to go to the UK to shadow or overseas to shadow. You're not the first person to shadow a rheumatologist at Northwestern. It's great. You'll get good experience. The goal with shadowing is to explore what the role of a physician is in the United States. So shadowing abroad is actually pretty useless. But in general, I want students, I try to teach you all to stop asking about how something will look on an application. Do something you want to do, present it in your application, and then medical schools will either like it or they won't. That's how I would think about that. Would you say the type of research matters? I'm a social psychology research assistant. I find it super interesting. No, at the end of the day, the goal of research is come up with a hypothesis gather data, analyze the data, come to conclusions and results. The goal of research is to understand the scientific method. With a 510 to 514 score, can you apply almost anywhere, or does that significantly limit where you can apply? I think you can apply to almost every school. Well, let me change my language there. You can apply to every school with a 510 or 514. You can apply to every school with a 570 or 472. The way that I like to think about stats is, do they keep the door open or do they close it? And so will a 510 close the door for some schools? Potentially, but that's okay. A 510 isn't a bad score. And I try to explain this to people, right? I was talking to some people the other day, and they're like, oh, we got a terrible score. They did terrible 507. I'm like, a 507 is not a terrible score. It's not, oh my gosh, fantastic. It's not terrible. We have to reframe kind of our idea of what a good MCAT score is, right? The average, the newest data just came out for the class that started in 2024. It was a 511.8. It went up 0.1. It was 511.7. Now it's 511.8. The standard deviation is a 6.7. So anywhere between a 505, 505.1, I think, so 505, and a 511.8, 34% of those, right, in a bell curve distribution, 34% of those students are getting into an MD school. So 510, 514, good score. Apply wherever you want. I wouldn't let that limit you. I received a grade lower than a C in 2 science classes. Should I do a post-bacc and take other science classes, or just retake those 2 classes? There's many more data points needed to determine whether you should do a post-bacc or something else. Are those classes required prereqs? So are they just regular science classes, or are they prereqs? If they are prereqs, a C- or lower, I would retake that specific class, because a C- is generally not considered passing. What is my view on literature review on research? I'm doing that and presenting different topics that interest me at symposium while I'm looking for lab research opportunities. Great, go for it. Are in-state MD schools like Rutgers, NJMS, so New Jersey Medical School, more forgiving of low-stat applicants who, quote, reinvented themselves at a post-bacc and scored at least a 507 plus MCAT? I think there are lots of schools, whether it's a state school or not a state school, that are forgiving and understands that you're allowed to struggle. So I wouldn't pigeonhole state schools. I wouldn't pigeonhole MD schools. Ethan's Tech. Can I obtain LORs and upload them to Interfolio this spring semester? Hold them until AMCAS opens in 2026. Do schools see when letters are originally uploaded to Interfolio? So they do. So for some reason, Interfolio, and I don't know why they do this, there's just kind of a legacy thing. They will, when they transmit the letter to the application service, it comes with an Interfolio cover letter that says, hey, this letter was uploaded to Interfolio, it was reviewed, and here's the date it was uploaded. So yeah, I wouldn't do that. Ideally, letters are dated the year that you apply. Interfolio will call you out on that. My LORs, which is part of our platform Mapped, we don't attach a cover letter. So theoretically, you could upload a letter today that is dated for 2026 and play that game. So yeah. Not sure, Hzilla, what your point is here. Unless you have to personally make the diagnosis, decide the treatment, and deal with the results, shadowing is so passive it's useless. It's not useless. It gets boring after a while. The goal of shadowing is to not be a physician. The goal of shadowing is to understand that being a physician is so much more than just patient care. And the problem is that students go into medicine thinking, oh, as a doctor, it's all sunshine and roses, and I get to take care of patients and be at their bedside all the time. When in reality, right, there was a study of residents, and it was like 11% of their time was spent at the bedside with patients. Everything else was charting and dealing with other people and meetings and all kinds of other stuff. And so the goal of shadowing is to give you the information, the full picture of what a physician does and different types of physicians. So it's not useless. It's just not practicing medicine. So you can't compare those two. Can I do my pre-med online? You can, but it will affect your ability to apply to some schools. Zane, having a hard time deciding what out-of-state schools to apply to. Are there any med schools that aren't top 20 that you highly recommend? I recommend every medical school. Top 20, you have to remember, top 20, this T20 is a fake made-up baloney created by a company to sell magazines. This list that you all cherish and worship is a list created by a company to sell magazines. That's all it is. And yeah, some of the schools and the hospitals definitely love playing the game, but it doesn't mean anything about your education. It does not mean anything about your future career. So stop drooling over this top 20 list and apply to medical schools where you feel like you're going to be a good fit. Can I get to medical school if I'm a skibbity sigma boy? No, it's skibbity toilet. One of the reasons I am pursuing med is my experience during the Libyan Civil War as an Arab American. Is this type of trauma something I should shy away from speaking about in my app? Everyone has different traumas. Some people don't have any traumas. I was talking about this with a family yesterday. They're like, we don't really have a lot of like, woe is me kind of stories, and that's okay. Your authentic journey, your authentic story as to why you want to be a doctor should be the story. So I think last year, one of the students we were working with in Application Academy, which is our group coaching for the application cycle, which, by the way, our next cohort starts next month. So if you're applying this cycle, check it out, applicationacademy.com. One of the students had a very similar story, coming from a kind of a war-torn country, having a story about what they saw over there, all that stuff. So yeah, tell your authentic story. I just got deferred after a great interview for my top choice med school. Should I immediately send a letter of intent or time for when the defer list turns into a wait list? Yeah, I don't know if I would send a letter of intent. You can. I would send, if it is your top choice, right? You're saying it is your top choice. Then potentially the answer is, yeah. What you can do is basically say, thank you for continuing to consider my application. At this time, you are my top choice, blah, 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 and just make it super clear that they are the top choice. Christopher, sometimes I feel like my reasons are very too, quote, straightforward for wanting to go to medical school. Most students have very basic reasons for wanting to go to medical school. That does not make them bad, it just makes them common. And that is okay. The medical school personal statement has to do its job in helping the reader understand why you want to be a doctor. It doesn't have to be some elaborate, unique story that nobody has ever heard of before. If I'm consistently getting 510 on the blueprint full length, 516 on AAMC, does a 520 sound attainable? If you're consistently getting a 516 on AAMC, I would expect a 516. Chandler, my school says that they send committee letters after secondaries are done. Does that make sense? Chandler, I would love for you to message me. I'm creating a list of schools that I need to reach out to. I had another student recently. The process is the primary gets verified. Once the primary application gets verified, then the student has to take that, upload it to the school, the pre-health office, then has 8 weeks to make the committee letter. And so this student didn't get their committee letter until like near the end of September. And I was just like, oh, like that is horrible. So yeah, let me know what school that is, Chandler. I won't tell on you. All right. What are core competencies that medical school admissions committees, admissions committees look for when showing examples in your personal statement as opposed to telling? So whenever I talk about the personal statement, Emperor Palpatine, I don't talk about the core competencies at all. I don't think it's important. I think what unfortunately happens is students take the core competencies and they go, okay, I'm going to look at this core competency and this is how I'm going to put it in my application. I'm going to take that core competency and put it in my application. I don't think using the core competencies as a checklist for your application is authentic. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't talk about it at all. I rarely talk about the core competencies. Can I obtain a science letter from a neuroscience lab assistant professor? Majority of my pre-med classes were on Zoom during COVID. Difficult to connect with faculty. Potentially, one potential option you might have is to have the assistant professor write it, but the professor co-sign it. That would be my ideal situation there. Michael Motorcycle. What's poppin', party people? All right. Should I list independent study classes that were around research as one activity? You can. There's no big rules around that. I'm looking to do a post-bacc work after graduation. The non-degree seeking program at my school is not going to contribute to my undergraduate degree. Is it still okay for me to do the program? So Penelope, I think there are more questions to follow up here. Is when you say the non-degree seeking program at your university does not contribute to your undergraduate GPA, do you mean they do not factor it into your undergraduate GPA on their transcript? Because if the classes are undergraduate level classes and not master's level classes, then for the medical school application, they do contribute to your undergraduate GPA. You guys have to remember that what the school does can be and oftentimes is different than what the medical school application does. So yeah. So the first question is, do you need to do a non-degree seeking program, or can you just take classes as a non-degree seeking student? What does the program offer you above and beyond just taking classes? Because oftentimes you're paying a lot more money for this program or certificate or something that ultimately doesn't really help you. Eating my smoothie, walking on the treadmill, answering some questions, having fun. Does where you go to medical school really matter if you're trying to get into a surgical specialty? Very, very little. Very little. Instagram, you guys got to step up, ask some more questions. I'm going to take classes as a non-degree student after graduation, but the grades of these classes are not going to affect. They will have, and that's what I'm telling you, Penelope. They will have an effect on your GPA. Maybe not on your school's transcript, but when you put them into the medical school application, the medical school application service will adjust your GPA accordingly. Krista, not sure if you missed or skipped my question. I joined this session late. Maybe I missed the theme of this Q&A. I don't do themes. I didn't see your question. Let me scroll back up. Found it. Just missed it. Sorry, Krista. Is it okay to do OChem, OrgChem? So, Krista, step one, it's either Orgo or OChem. We don't call it OrgChem. OChem 1 over summer and community college, and then do OChem 2 at State University upon transfer. Some say you should do both sequences in the same place. I wouldn't worry about it in the big picture in terms of what medical schools care about. What I potentially would do is maybe reach out to the pre-health office at the university that you're transferring to. And number one, make sure that they will accept the OChem from the community college. And number two, from a syllabus standpoint, see if they have any data on students who did OChem 1 at the community college. Do they struggle in OChem 2, maybe because the syllabus doesn't match up or something like that? But for medical school purposes, it's not an issue. So just make sure that students handle that transition well between the different curriculum and whether or not the school actually accepts that transfer credit for your major if you need that. Awesome. Glad we got you, Krista. What would you say is the most challenging part of undergraduate trying to enter medical school? The MCAT. By far the MCAT, at least for me. Look, there is a lot to juggle as a pre-med student. You're juggling classes. You're juggling growing up, right? I think when we talk like big picture about being a pre-med student, I think we also ignore too much the fact that you all are growing up, right? You're becoming adults and entering this world and trying to figure out who the heck you are. And some of you do that better than others. And it's a struggle for a lot of people. And when I went to school, right, cell phones were just becoming a thing. We didn't have all the social media that we have now. And so it was a different world. And I think at the end of the day, all of the things that you're juggling as a pre-med student, on top of juggling as a human being, trying to figure out who you are in this world, it's a lot. And so I think one of my kind of favorite things to talk about with people, with my own kids, is the fact that as humans, right, we way underestimate what we can accomplish in a 5-year period, in a long time. And we way overestimate what we can accomplish in a short period of time. And so I think this mindset that there's shadowing and research and clinical experience and community service and clubs and leadership and right? There's this idea that all of it has to happen today, but it's just not true. And so I think the students who are the most successful are the ones that learn to layer. And they start with their academics, and they start with social life, and they start with just continuing to add a little bit here and a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And the students that struggle try to do it all at once. And they get completely overwhelmed, and their grades falter, their emotions falter, right? They start to get down because they're struggling, and oh my gosh, I'm not smart enough to do this. So it's a lot, but it's doable, right? 50, 60,000 students a year applying to medical school, close to 70, for about 30,000 seats. 30,000 students are starting medical school every year. It's doable. And so I think that's probably the biggest struggle, is just figuring out how you operate and not worrying about all of your friends and your classmates and your roommates and your club member friends and what they're doing, and just do what works for you. That's the long answer. Short answer is the MCAT sucks. I am a current non-traditional looking to apply in 2026. I currently have 100 clinical hours and only 12 hours non-clinical. Do you think my lower non-clinical hours will be bad for my application? For some schools, yeah. I know of some schools that will filter you out for less than 100, less than 150. Just depends on the school. I would try to continue to get non-clinical volunteer hours. And again, right, just going back to what we were just talking about doing it all. That doesn't mean you need to quit your job and go get a 40-hour-a-week volunteer position. But if you can volunteer one weekend a month, or one weekend day a month, right? One day over the weekend, that's 8-ish hours. That adds up over time. And I think we just forget that how math works. And so, yeah, like go volunteer at Habitat for Humanity and go build some houses one day a month. if I'm planning to take the MCAT March 2026 and apply the same year, when would be an ideal time to start putting together the application package? Timeline, subscription, AAMC, MSAR. I don't think you need a subscription to the MSAR. Everyone wants a subscription for the MCAT data. I've been talking to some deans of admissions and figuring out how to potentially put all of that data, going to the medical schools, getting all of that data and putting it into Mapped for free for you all to use. But yeah, the MSAR, it's like $36, I think, for 2 years, or $38 for 2 years versus whatever the price is for 1 year. But in terms of starting your application, generally start it around January of that year you're applying. Start working on personal statement, all that kind of stuff. All right, last couple minutes. What else you got for me? All right, friends, I'm going to end there. Hope you have a great week. I should be here next week. See you later. Bye-bye.